the Presidential Amnesty Programme, which was established by President Umar Musa Yar'Adua as administration in 2009 as part of the government's measure to reduce militancy in the oil-rich Niger Delta region, has been a major talking point this year. The federal government had concluded plans to terminate the Presidential Amnesty Programme in May 2023, but following opposition from the stakeholders in the Niger Delta region, the federal government rescinded its earlier plan to terminate the programme. The interim administrator of PAP, Major General Barry Ndiobu, retired, confirmed the government's new position. Ndiobu, in a statement issued by media consultant of PAP, Donu Kubara, hailed the federal government for listening to the voice of critical stakeholders in the region who strongly opposed to the stopping of the scheme. Ndiobu expressed gratitude to the federal government for listening to his advice, adding that he had made it clear that critical stakeholders across the region were strongly opposed to the winding down of PAP. So joining us now on the show as we discuss the federal government's decision to reverse the planned termination of the program and reaction from stakeholders of the Niger Delta region is Liborous Oshoma, lawyer and public affairs analyst. Welcome to the show and great to have you on the show. A lot of people will say things like this normally should have a sunset clause, and the sunset clause is way past.
Yeah, I agree with you that I should have a sunset clause, but the question is, what did the program set out to achieve? Has the program achieved its main objective? If it has not achieved its main objective, what are those processes hindering it from achieving those objectives, and what should be done to ensure that, you know, you achieve those objectives and then before you wind down? First and foremost, the program was set out to achieve disarmament, demobilization, rehabilitation, and sustainable reintegration. They have, to a large extent, been able to disarm and then demobilize, even though you still have, you know, a lot of, you know, security challenges in the region, including kidnapping. They have rehabilitated also to a large extent. I think they have succeeded in rehabilitating, training about 30,000 youths or former militants that, you know, were disarmed. And then I think of that 30,000, 1,050, you know, were trained, some in Nigerian universities, some abroad, including in various areas, including piloting, medical doctors, lawyers. And about 13 went as far as, you know, acquiring PhD. You know, but where the major challenge is now is, you know, sustainable integration and reinsertion, you know, into the civil populace. We also agree that with the recent, you know, unemployment in Nigeria, you don't just train people and then leave them to themselves without sustainable, you know, reintegration and finding way to enable them either create jobs for themselves or, you know, be employable. So that's where the challenge is now. So the unemployment rate is high. Recently, I think they also, you know, had partnership with some private sectors to, you know, on self-entrepreneurship development. So with all of this still outstanding, I think it is a very, you know, good development from the government to allow, you know, the program, especially also with the recent crisis, the oil theft crisis in the region, you know, all of the hula baloo and the shouting. There's need to, you know, tread with care on this. Even though I also believe that there should be a reorganization of the entire structure. There shouldn't just be the way it's consistently be. We all agree, world over, employment is becoming a big challenge. So that's their reintegration and reinsertion. I think it should be more about entrepreneurial development than, you know, employment training. So that's the only area I have, you know, a little challenge.
Okay, while it is true that many youths of the Niger Delta have benefited from disarmament, demobilization, reintegration, one major concern about that amnesty program is that, look, the managers, many of them, have used it to serve purposes of nepotism.
Yes.
And most of the people who have been sent for training abroad are relatives of the people in charge. And also, there have been concerns about corrupt self-enrichment. Okay? Questions similar to questions that have been raised with regard to the Niger Delta Development Commission. Will you say, going forward, yes, good idea, government has decided to go ahead with it and not terminate it. Will you be asking for an audit of the Amnesty Programme, particularly in terms of transparency and accountability.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I said there shouldn't be business as usual. There should be an audit. You can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So you remember even the former handlers of the scheme also had been accused of, corrupt enrichment. In some cases, students are stranded abroad, school fees are not paid. And at the end of the day, it's in the news and it just fizzled out and died there. So there's need, just the same way, it shouldn't be just like the attempt at peeping into what happened in the NDDC. There should be a holistic audit of the entire program since inception. How much has been spent so far, how much has been budgeted so far, and where it has been spent up to the last kobo. And then there should be a little bit, like I said, there should also be a little bit fine-tuning to ensure that it is redirected and refocused away from the idea of just training and then looking for employment, because most of them also that were initially trained were trained in the oil and gas sector, majority of them. But now that with the crisis in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, there's also need to refocus. I also know that they are also attempting to go into commodity trading for some of them in SMEs. But it shouldn't just be about commodity trading. There are other ways to partner with the private sectors to ensure that you achieve more for majority of the people, not just going abroad to train and then you come back, you are back to square one. Then also the issue of corrupt enrichment and nepotism had also, been a serious issue that consistently raised ugly head on these issues. And all of those areas where people had been stranded in, you remember that there was a time that some of them protested in Russia, some protested in somewhere in Europe of their school fees not being paid, and how a lot of them were sent out of their various accommodations. At the end of the day, no reports, nothing happened. So there's need for not just the government, even the Presidential Amnesty Programme itself, to look into all of this, do a first and foremost self-cleansing of what all of these activities, and then maybe present a report to the federal government. The federal government, if the federal government is not confident of the report or happy with what had happened, and then the federal government can now do a second opinion on the matter. That's another way of imposing confidence in the process. Since the government have been magnanimous enough to say let the process continue, let it not just be as a result of the threats by the stakeholder, but let there be a way to truly show that this process is what it costs, and that is going to do the program differently. They're going to run the program differently from the way it is being run. And the accusations that have consistently been raised would definitely be taken care of.
A lot of people are also saying that. Can this program be morphed into that NDDC framework?
The challenge here is NDDC already is taking too much. And it seems as if there is no direction. NDDC is everywhere and nowhere. Look at the challenge of the floods in Bayelsa. While that of Jigawa, I saw the report this morning on your TV station. While that of Jigawa, you also saw that the Northern Region Development Commission is at least trying to play a role. But the NDDC is nowhere to be found in as far as the Bayelsa crisis is concerned. So the Bayelsa government also has accused the federal government and his agency of not even paying a visit, even though in August the federal government was soliciting for assistance for the flood victim in Pakistan. But that of Bayelsa and Pakistan, and almost the same, and yet the federal government and NDDC had not played any key role. So in this case, if you now add this program, alongside the already confused programs of NDDC, the NDDC almost have become a contract bazaar for certain persons.
But is that not what this amnesty program has become too?
No. Amnesty program is slightly different from what the NDDC program had become. And that's why even the attempt at auditing NDDC didn't end well. So if you say, let's even assume without conceding that it is a contract bazaar, do you now say, okay, let us just merge them and just let it be business as usual for everybody? It shouldn't be. So I still believe that NDDC, the government should sit back and look at NDDC again and say, look, we need to fine-tune this body to be able to achieve its set objectives. So when you do that, this amnesty program is a presidential interventionist program.
But it's not being audited all this while.
That's what I'm saying.
So is that on the bazaar already?
So when you refuse to audit it, do you now say, oh, because we have refused to audit it, let it continue the way it should be? And that's why I'm also calling on the management.
You are spending money. As you spend money, audit should come afterwards.
Whose fault here now?
So
whose fault? Government has failed to audit. Okay. And that's what I'm saying. For the fact that you have refused to audit does not mean that you should just collapse the program and all the beneficiaries should go back to square one. So you spend money. You've spent money, you should find out where and how this money was spent. And then so that you know where the lapses are, you know where your challenges are, you know where your problems are, and so you know where to focus on. But just ending the program because or merging it with NDDC that has also, failed largely, it's not the solution. That's basically what I'm saying.
Liborous. Now the federal government says it's going to continue with the amnesty program in the Niger Delta. Would that decision, laudable as we may say, not provide justification for those who are saying that there should also be amnesty for Boko Haram in the north? I know a group of senior advocates of Nigeria had come out to say the situation with Boko Haram is not the same as Niger Delta. But there are persons, in the northern part of the country who are saying, what is the difference? If you do disarmament, reintegration, then there should also be demobilization and reintegration for the Boko Haram.
Not just persons in the north. I remember when the program started, Ankyo Briggs did say that the program was actually compensating criminality. And that what it means is that you're telling those that have the capacity to carry arms that, it is beneficial to carry arms. So now you're compensating those that have carried arms because they are carrying arms. How about those who had complied with the rules and regulations, the laws of the land, and are helpless? What happens to them? I completely agree also, but the two scenarios are different here. Over time, we have seen the benefits, even though despite all of the corrupt enrichment, the challenges, we have also seen people genuinely, even though also you have that, when the program started, there were some persons in Lagos who had no business with the agitation, who were beneficiaries of the amnesty program. There were some gate men in Lagos who were earning money simply because they have somebody that knows somebody in the presidential amnesty program. They were just beneficiaries. So all of this cannot be ruled out. So, but the cases here are different. One, what led to it? There were agitations for resource control. And because of that, some persons said, look, if you cannot use these resources for our benefits, we own these resources, God-given resources. If you cannot use it for our benefit, then nobody should come take from it. And so to that extent, decide destruction. And some of us advise that, look, you are creating more havoc in your society, in your land, in your environment that is already destroyed. But in the case of the Boko Haram, for example, what is the agitation? That Western education is forbidden. In the case of bandits, what is their agitation? That there are no jobs. And so because there are no jobs, or that government, some people are rustling their cows. And so they decide to take up arms and kidnap people. You kill people senselessly. So all of this. So after killing all these persons, despite all of this, remind you, there is some persons proposed amnesty for them, and some persons were even actually trained. Some members of these people were trainings and demobilization and attempt at reintegration, which a lot of people also criticize. But
Operation Suluhu.
Okay, so whatever became of that program till date also is still sketchy. Government had not come out straight to say this is where we are going, this is what we have done. Every day you hear that some people, members of Boko Haram, have been arrested, they are going to be rehabilitated, but yet the numbers still keep increasing. What that means is that rehabilitation is not a solution to the issue in the north, as distinct from the crisis in the Niger Delta that disarmament and to a large extent rehabilitation had been able to achieve. So that's why some persons who initially also were sympathetic, I remember Ozekome when he was kidnapped also raising the issue that there should be amnesty for kidnappers. But kidnapping, kidnapping has not abated despite all of these, proposals. People keep going into it. I think government should do much more than just throwing rehabilitation, including even the issue of Niger Delta. Government should do much more, because the issue of environmental degradation will still come up someday if the issues are not addressed. The Ogoni cleanup, for example, is still hanging in the balance. So if all of these environmental issues are not addressed, you will be shocked that after rehabilitating these ones and there are no jobs tomorrow, a new set of people that didn't know about this program will rise up. And that's why there should be a refocus, a audit, a refocus and redirection. Okay.
It should be a refocus, a re-audit, a redirection. Do you know the cost? Let's put a cost to it. Let's talk numbers. I like numbers. Do you know the cost this has cost us? A couple of years ago, when Goodluck Jonathan said this clocked 10 years, he said this had cost us 500 billion. The budget for this is between 20 to 35. I think 2017, they increased it to 35 billion. The budget for NDDC was 436 billion in 2020. 500 billion in the space of 10 years have been extended. How long are we going to keep spending this money? And the result of what you have seen, is it worth the 500 billion we spent in the first 10 years? No, let's just juxtapose it with figures.
Rufai, we're in a country where we throw money at every problem. I can tell you that if you actually, conduct an audit of how much had been budgeted, how much had been allocated, appropriated, how much had been budgeted, how much had been appropriated, and the actual spending, there will be a whole lot of gap. I talked about the NDDC, for example. During the COVID crisis, do you know that NDDC, even directors that whose approval limits were not beyond 10 million, for example, will approve 10 separate contracts on the same day of 10 million each, so as not to, go above the approval threshold. So if you also carry out an audit of the activities of the Presidential Amnesty Programme, you might likely find things like this. For me, I blame the federal government for throwing money at problems and not even bothering to find out how this money is spent. Because also, let me also tell you, I remember then when I was in UI, you hear stories in the university how money that was budgeted and money appropriated are two different things. In other climes, once money is budgeted, it is deemed appropriated. But here, 50 billion will be budgeted. When such money is eventually released, maybe 13 billion will be released, but you will sign for 50 billion. And the boys will settle themselves with the other ones. I also give you an instance. During the administration of President Yaradua, he approved 38 billion naira for the dredging of River Niger. Goodluck Jonathan came, Dr. Abatizier, thank God he was in that government. That contract was reviewed to 40 billion. At the end of the day, as I speak to you today, both River Niger and River Benue have not been dredged. The two of you spoke about the dredging of that river and also the building of the dams. What happened to those money? Nobody has bothered to audit what happened. And today we are talking about rainfall from God. In the same vein, we throw 436 billion to NDDC, 35 billion to the Presidential Amnesty Programme, and nobody is asking. At the end of the day, we need an audit. Come, present how this money was spent to enable us give you more. Even when they visit Senate committees, it is rub my back, I rub your back. And that's why you hear Honorable Minister off the mic. So most times, exactly, or the fence. So most times what we do is we throw money at problems. There should be an end to throwing money at problems. So what we need to do, throwing money at problems does not mean you should end the program. Audit how much you have spent so far and then redirect the funding to achieve maximum result. If you are spending so much money and you are not achieving the desired result, it means you also have a problem. It's just the same thing like this oil theft. You say that you just discovered pipelines, but that they have been there for 9 years. Common sense dictates that if you are, for example, pumping crude from a platform, you have pumped from your end, you have pumped about 10,000 metric ton, and then you get to the tank, you're seeing 5,000 metric ton. It means that what you are pumping is not going to the end. So you check your lines. In the same vein, if you are spending 35 billion naira and you look at what you are spending 35 billion naira for, students are protesting in faraway Russia, you need to reassess what you have spent.
Liborous, we have just about 2 minutes to go. Now, it's good to do the audit. We agree on that. But you also have to deal with the menace of variation. Those contracts never yield any result because the contractors in collusion with government officials are perpetually coming back for variation. Nigeria is the only country where a contract will take 20 years, but the variation will be going on, will be piling. But okay, one of the arguments that stakeholders in the Niger Delta offered for the continuation of the Amnesty Programme is that if the Amnesty Programme is terminated, there will be a return to militancy in the Niger Delta. Do you think there's a basis for that, considering the fact that at least aspects of the agitation had already been addressed by the federal government?
I think...
Is it automatic?
I think that's a threat that the federal government also should not take lightly. And that's why, for me, I just said, it is not about just auditing. You also need to reevaluate and refocus the program. On the issue of variation, quickly, permit me. Here, it's only in this country also that a contract that was supposed to kick off by January will not kick off until December. And so by December, definitely prices have changed and there will be variation. So on the issue of this issue, once you terminate the program, there will be a renewed hostility. Because you have not been able to successfully, even though you have spent money to rehabilitate, but you have not been able to, you said sustainable reintegration. When there is no sustainable reintegration and the challenges that led to the agitation in the first place have not been taken care of, the stakeholders are consistently going to use that threat of, once you terminate this program now, there will be renewed hostility, as a bait to ensure that the program remains. What you then need to do at that is to cure that bait so that tomorrow when you decide to terminate, there won't be any excuses why people will tell you keep it because you have been able to achieve, the purpose of the program. That's what the federal government needs to do. After auditing, look at what you have achieved so far and what are the challenges that led to this. Find a way, at least 80% in solving those challenges. Once you achieve that, there won't be any need to say people who are gainfully employed, who are doing their businesses and who are doing well, how do you now tell me that they will come back and also take up arms against the state, and the environmental issues are well taken care of? There won't be any need for that. But when you permit me to use the word, working the money, the money comes, you share, and then you use little and try to showcase that little as something big. Those people, knowing fully well that you are consistently sharing money, this money is not going to what it's meant for, they are going to threaten you next time when you say you want to end the program, that look, if you end it, you know what is going to happen. And so you sustain the corruption and until someday it blows in all our faces.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Well, we want to thank you very much, Liborous Oshoma, for joining us on the program this morning.
Always my pleasure, and happy belated birthday once again.
Thank you.